I'm wearing it backwards right now. Dang it! Rectangles. Can you name a better shape? Yes, circles. Y'all know I love a circle. But if you want to see some clothing options made from circles, Morgan Donner did that a while back. So rectangles. Can you name a better shape? No, of course not. Honestly, somebody's probably already made this video too, but I can't keep track of everything on the internet. And this is gonna be my take on it, so, you know, not a tutorial. Just me trying things and probably messing up a few times with the light suggestion that you could try it too. I have several rectangular designs that I would like to try because of course I had this idea a solid 6 months or more ago, and I've just been building up on it like a raven making its little hoard of shiny objects. I've sketched them on this very random and partially chopped up piece of paper. I make no guarantees that we're gonna get to all of these, even though the very nature of this is that these are like very simple beginner level sewing projects. So let's whiz through the idea section at top speed. That way you don't have time to get attached to a design that may cease to be involved. So first up, there's the design that I'm not going to be trying, because yes, why not start by telling you that? I think the simplest design out of a rectangle is either a skirt or a dress that is shirred. Shirring. You can even pre-buy fabric like this and literally just sew a seam down one side. It's a great rectangular design. Unfortunately, for reasons I'm not sure about, my machine does not like doing shirring. I don't feel like messing with it. I also don't super love wearing shirring. It's not a texture that I really enjoy up against my skin, so we're not doing this. Oh, the blue leaves behind stains. So moving on to stuff that we maybe are potentially doing. Rectangle, hole cut in the center, folded in half, sewn a little bit. It's a top, potentially. Rectangle with a slit cut in the center and like seams in certain places becomes the jumpsuit. I've already done this, and I love the thing that I made, but I made it out of a stretch material, and I really want to see if I can make it out of a woven material this time. Dress. Really simple. Gathered on the top, sacky tint, flowy dress. Another dress. Kind of the exact same option, but like it's got tiers now. Technically all rectangles. This, which is a top. Yeah? This is something I've seen. So I'm pretty sure it works because I've seen other people do it. This is another dress, believe it or not. There's kind of two options for how you can do it. I think I'm gonna go this way, and this is again something that I've kind of already done, but I really want to see if I can do it extremely simply with really just rectangles. Now, a lot of the success of garments made from very, very simple shapes is based on the type of fabric that you use. Drape and flow can make a rectangle look like a dramatic gown, you know? So I'm intending all of these designs for non-stretch fabric, probably, and I'm gonna be looking for thinner, lighter, flowier materials. And I'm just gonna pick out a bunch of them right now and not even really decide which goes with which design so that I can get them all washed. Like a good little sewist. Washed it, dried it, ironed, some of it. I got bored. We have a lot of options here. Did I maybe just overwhelm myself with options? Maybe. Also, y'all, it is pouring outside. Southern California pouring, which is quite different than like Florida pouring. But it's supposed to rain for the next like 3 or 4 days. So this whole video is just gonna be a battle against the darkness. So I have some floral materials that are very small pieces. These are each 28 inches. Like they're 60-inch fabric, but only 28 inches. But they're nice drapey, soft fabrics. And I think this would be enough, yeah, to do one of the tops. It might not be enough for the sashes, but you can always make the sashes out of like ribbon or something. So this is basically a like wrap or tie around top. It's literally a rectangle with your neck hole cut in the center, and I think you could do a variety of neck holes. You know, you could go more boat neck, you could do just like a circular crew neck. Depending on your fabric and how slippery it is, you probably, well, I don't know, we'll have to figure out. Can you do like a deeper scoop neck in the front, or is that going to make things shift around? Like, does your fabric need to be even on both sides so that the weight is distributed evenly? I don't know. But then you just put a tie of some kind, like the same fabric made into, you know, a little tie loop or bias tape, ribbon, something on either side. You tie the back around you, you tie the front around you, or vice versa. I mean, how incredibly simple, right? Right? I've seen somebody do this. I've never tried it myself. Let's try it. I want this top to tie around my waist, though you could also make a cropped version that ties right under the bust. So I'm measuring from my back over my shoulder to my front, which gives me 36 inches. Wow, I'm a yard. I folded my fabric in half at 18 inches long and cut off the excess, then folded that again and trimmed down the edges just because they are crazy wonky on this scrap. The joy of drapey fabric is that it's also super shifty, so cutting a straight line is not the easiest. What you think is straight usually isn't. But you know what? That's okay, because these simple designs are not dependent on perfection to look good or be comfy or function as clothing. So our rectangle is 36 by about 27 now, and then I went ahead and cut out a sort of boat neck style hole in the center, 8 inches by 3 inches, which is not very big, but I prefer to start smaller and cut it larger later on. Like right now, it barely goes over my head, but I'm not sure how I'm gonna be finishing that edge, so I'm just gonna leave it. This left me with a little chunk of fabric here, so I'm gonna cut all of it into thinnish strips to see if I have enough to make the ties with. It would be easier to do one long rectangle for each side of the top, but piecing rectangles together is totally fine. Ultimately, we want to use as much of this material as possible. What, my baby boy? Sewing this top up was very straightforward. You start by hemming the 2 long edges of the rectangle. You can do a fancy, neat baby hem, but a regular old double fold hem is fine as well. That's what I did. I then sewed one thin rectangle onto each short end of the main rectangle, right side to right side, like so. I have 3 more strips left, so I cut 2 of them in half and sewed those halves onto the 4 ends. Yeah? So hopefully now that's long enough that I can tie the back in the front and the front in the back. I tested it out and it seems pretty solid. Those ties need to be turned into tubes on each end and then turned right side out, and here's where I turned on the iron and started doing a bunch of pressing. If I had been making this top 2 years ago, would have been a much more lackadaisical process, and that's totally fine, but I'm a little pickier about my finishes these days. The center bit of the tie gets turned under on the backside and then top stitched in that ditch to hold it down, and that's basically the top, right? We just need to finish that neckline so it's not a raw edge. Having tested it again, I decided to cut it a little bit larger, but not too much. And then since I have one single strip of fabric left, I tried cutting it in half lengthwise and using it to bind the neckline, turning the whole thing inside and top stitching it down. You really want to do binding with fabric cut on the bias, hence the phrase bias binding, but I figured I'd risk it, and you know what? It pretty much worked fine. 'Twas just a bit fiddly. Wha-bam! Am I right? How I will be entering all rooms now. Okay, but really, like, it's so simple, but it looks so good. It's drapey, it feels nice. I mean, I have my jumpsuit under it right now, but I think it would feel really nice in the summer, you know, just as a shirt without something under it. But it does also layer on top of a jumpsuit really well, except I super duper need to pee right now, and I'd have to take it all off, so let's make this fast. You could build in some darts right here, and it would create some natural shaping to this front piece to make it hug your bust line a little bit better, and it would make it also hug your side a little bit better so that you don't have as much of the gaping on the sides. Although I don't really mind the gaping, it's very breezy again in the summer. You'd really have some air on your pits. This took me about 2 hours, start to finish, I think, and it used up pretty much all of that fabric. I only have some like very small scraps left over. And honestly, a big chunk of the time, a big chunk of that 2 hours was me doing the neckline, because I did kind of choose the most complicated way to bind it. You could absolutely just hem the neckline or bind it with actual bias binding, which would have been easier than what I did. I'm so fascinated with this that I think I'm just gonna whip up a few more versions. Maybe try those darts, do some different necklines, and then I will show them all to you right now. I'm actually gonna go pee right now. I really enjoy the concept of these wrap tops. They're super adjustable, which we always love, and in this nice floral fabric, they kind of look fancy and like office work appropriate, right? Because the shape is so simple, they're not going to hug the sides and cover a bra the way that my split side dresses do, so I think they're better for layering over a top, a dress, or just a sports bra in a bright color, because that's always fun. For the second top, I tried those darts, and they really didn't make any difference, because I don't think I did them big enough. I also tried doing a square neckline, binding, again, eesh. And then I realized when photographing it that I kind of prefer it with the back tied first and the front tied on top, although it really works both ways. These tops are super reversible. You could even make them out of 2 different fabrics, like an outer and a lining, which would make the neckline finishing way easier. And then like a coordinating fabric for the ties, so it's reversible back to front and inside to outside and front to back tying, right? Ugh, now I kind of want to do that, but too late. It's on the list for later. Okay, I wasn't planning on moving on to another garment tonight, but even with all the fiddly necklines, it's been so fast. I have time, so you know what? Let's do another one. Do I have baklava in my teeth? Y'all, this baklava stand opened at our farmer's market, and it's so good. I just want more, but I already ate it all. Anyway, I want to do the other really simple top. This one is like a long sleeved one, basically, or I guess it doesn't have to be long sleeved, but that's kind of the concept, and probably a little more of a cropped top. The basic thought is you just take not too big of a piece of fabric, fold it in half long ways like that. Does it look like a shirt? I mean, we're basically gonna cut a neck hole and then sew like here. So your body comes out, and these are the sleeves. Yeah? So it's like 2 seams and then it's finishing, which I never want to ignore. Sometimes people are like, oh, this thing is so easy to make. It's only 1 seam or 2 seams. And I'm like, okay, it's only 1 like joining seam, but you're ignoring all of the edge finishes. Like you still gotta hem all of the edges and finish the neckline and everything. So I never want to ignore that when I'm talking about like a super simple design or construction. That is part of the process. And it's honestly the longest part of the process when you're doing something really simple like this. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the size of this. This is, I wrote it down. It's 1/2 yard. This is another random scrap, and I noticed that it has this chunk cut out at the end, so I'm gonna have to shorten the whole piece, which is fine. The sleeves will be just more like 3/4-ish. I cleaned up some edges, folded it into 4ths, and cut a neckline again. And yeah, that's essentially it. Fastest cutout ever. Rather than French seaming the sleeves and figuring out how to transition that into a hem around the bottom edge, I decided to go with my super easy cheater method. You just hem the entire length of both long edges with a double fold, and then sew the sleeve seam. With a heavy fabric, this would get super bulky, but with something this light and thin, it's really not an issue at all, and it makes construction so much easier. Then I just had to hem the sleeves and finish the neckline, which I also did with a small double fold hem, and with some ironing, that'll be that. Now it's the next morning. Observe the coffee, even though the rest of me looks pretty much the same. But y'all, this was so easy to make. Way easier even than the first one. I don't recall if I timed myself, but I'm pretty sure it took less than an hour. And the fabric is so like flowy and delicious, so it's just all like flowy and delicious. It's fun. It's a really fun, simple design, and you could definitely mix it up. Again, with necklines, sleeve lengths, you could even cinch the sleeves if you wanted. You could add a band on the bottom here and even put elastic into that so that it does cinch in like a crop top. I think I am gonna make at least one more because since it's such a great like layering top, I thought it'd be fun to make it out of lace. You know, see-through fabrics would work great for this style. I might make more than one more, but we'll see how it goes. I'm really enjoying all of this like super simple experimentation. This first one is really so light and breezy and flowy. I love the feel of it on. Definitely would be great for like a yoga class or something. This looks super yoga-y, right? I did indeed make a second one from that lace material, and since I had plenty of it available for use, we got that full long sleeve. I also made the whole thing a little bit longer in top to bottom length, so it goes down closer to my waist, and then I left the opening a little bit bigger too. It again feels delightful on, especially because the air still passes through the lace, so when you move, there's this really fun flow of wind on your skin. I really wanted to try adding some cinching to the style, and also I've been trying to use this fabulously bright and soft stretch material for ages now, but it was such a small amount, and the pattern made it really hard to figure out what it would work for. But hey look, it worked great for this. I added some thin elastic to the bottom of the sleeves, fitted not to my wrists, but gently to my upper forearms, so it still like drapes down to the wrist normally, but then I can pull them up when I desire. I also added some elastic around that hemline, I guess you would call it, and I really like the look. This is the most sunshiny outfit I have ever put on. You'll see me coming from a mile away. Are you such a fancy puppy? Look at your little crossed paws. You're so precious. Okay, I really want to make the jumpsuit. This requires a bit more specificity with fabric, just with the amount of fabric. Logically I could go measure the one that I already made, but I'm not gonna do that. Logically, you take a 60-inch wide piece of fabric. You don't really want to do this with a 45 because it's not enough, and fold it in half. And that 30 inches is this measurement here. So then the length of the fabric, the yardage, is based on how long you want the pants to be, I guess. So like if I measure my inseam, it's about 60 inches. Let's see which of my fabrics will work for that. That one, potentially that one, this one, and this one. I might go with this purple stuff. It's got a nice little texture to it, and it's got like a really good drapey flow. Is that 60 inches wide though? I don't think it is. This is always an interesting thing, especially because so much of my fabric is from creative reuse stores, so I have no idea where this originated from. This is about 50 inches wide. So it's not your typical 45-inch fabric, but it's also nowhere close to your typical 60-inch fabric, which makes me wonder if it came from another country originally? I don't know. It might be too skinny for what we're doing here, but we're gonna try it. Because ultimately, all you do for this jumpsuit is fold your length of fabric in half, or you iron it first because it's very wrinkly, but you fold it in half, hot dog style, and then you cut a little slit in the middle, halfway through, and then you just sew some seams, and once again, finish edges. So you need actual straps created with this. Since I'm using a non-stretch fabric this time and I have enough extra, that seems pretty easy. Last time I was using a stretch material and I made the straps out of that stretch material, like I made a binding strip, and it was more difficult because it's hard to sew something skinny and stretchy and get it to like not stretch out and be too stretchy on the straps and all that. So I think this will be a lot easier. I could create the straps out of the same material. I'm of course also going to put pockets on it, which probably won't be rectangles. That's gonna go with all these dresses, jumpsuits. I'm gonna add pockets because I need there to be pockets on my clothing. It kind of falls outside of the whole rectangular piece challenge though. it's okay. Let me iron this and we'll give it a try. Should have ironed it before, but no. Once ironed, I cut this piece down to 65 inches because I can afford a little extra. That still doesn't look long enough to me, but I recall thinking the same thing last time I made this. I then folded it into quarters, and since we're only 50 inches wide instead of 60, I'm going to cut a very scant 3-inch slit here. I might have to go bigger later, but better to start smaller. Essentially, we're just sewing a seam down this side, stopping where the fabric needs to separate under the armpits. You can also sew a seam here to close off the leg portion more, but I'm gonna wait and see how it falls first. Actually, before I even sew that side seam, I'm gonna cut out some pockets and sew those on. And hey look, those basically start as a rectangle too, even though I cut out a little chunk. So this totally falls within the challenge. So I've got the pockets on here, and my side seams sewn up. Now we can futz around and fix some things. So first of all, I think this slit does need to be deeper, because right now, that's it actually like, you know, up in there. So we want this to split more because that will allow the whole thing to sit a little higher. I would normally say I can sew this way higher, right? Like to actually do thorough coverage here. The thing is, this is where doing it in a non-stretch fabric changes things. At this point, this like perfectly fit over my hips. I wouldn't want to make this entry hole any smaller, but I am making it bigger by cutting this. So I think I have to cut this first and then see how much wiggle room I have, quite literally wiggle room, and then I could sew these up more. But also I think this is just gonna be the downside or just the result of making it out of a woven fabric. You have to leave your entry bigger so you can get the whole thing on. Went ahead and cut both the front and back slit down another inch or two, and then I cut out some binding strips, not on the bias, because this is binding straight lines, so it doesn't need to stretch. And then thank goodness this isn't a tutorial, so you don't have to watch me struggle with V-neck binding. Someday, I'll get good at that, but today is not that day. I also threw a hem on those pant legs. Whee! Now for the binding around the armpits, that's also the strap, I'm gonna force it into a curve instead of doing the V shape. So I pulled that flat and measured it, then measured how long the strap needs to be, added those together, and that's the length of binding I need. On the bias this time, because it needs to curve. I gotta stop using these weird fabric colors so I can just use some of the pre-made binding I have in my drawers. That gets sewn on and then tested. Highly recommend always re-measuring those straps on your actual body, because it always ends up being shorter than my original measurement. Turned those, ironed a bunch, top stitched them closed with a slightly different color of thread because I ran out of the first one, whoops, and we're done. That worked. I definitely think this design works just fine with a non-stretch fabric, especially a nice drapey flowy one. The only difference being because it needs to be wide enough to go over your hips, I think it's always going to create something you'd want to wear like a shirt underneath, or at least like a sports bra underneath, you know, something that goes a little bit lower. Mine ended up going pretty low in the back, and the sides are still pretty low as well, which is fine because this is like very much sort of an overall, it's not overalls, but like an overall style thing that you throw on, super comfy at home. I might make one more of these to, you know, try it with the 60-inch. I'm not sure right now. If you can't tell, I'm making a bunch of stuff out of order, but if I do, you'll see it right now. Yeah, I didn't. I really wanted to make a second version of this because I do think it works in the non-stretch material if you have enough of it, you know? Unfortunately, I dug through the stack of fabric I washed for this project and not a single piece was actually 60 inches wide and simultaneously about 2 yards long. Sad day, but not really because I can always try this again later. You can kind of see from the back that this one is cutting up in my butt a little more than it should, and also this fabric was not fun to do binding with. So yeah, round 2, or I guess 3 technically, of this funny jumpsuit design is coming someday. All right, y'all, it is time to move on to a dress. This fabric has like a nice striped border on the bottom. Ta-da. So I haven't been able to figure out what to do with it because so many of the things that I make, I wouldn't be able to cut out with a border fabric like this, But this very simple, you know, gathered sack dress kind of thing, literally 2 rectangles with some binding at the top, you know? So I have, I think 3 yards of this. Yes, I do. I'm gonna cut it in half first of all. You could literally do like a tube and just 1 seam, but as with the jumpsuit, I'm gonna add pockets, so I want side seams. And then I think it is longer than it needs to be, because I am not 60 inches. Yeah, I've probably got about 10 inches, a foot of extra material at the top. I'll try to make this into the binding and the straps and maybe even the pockets. Yeah, I could make a pocket out of that. Y'all, it stopped raining for a bit, so I put out fresh birdseed and now there's a literal horde on the feeder outside. My babies! Okay, back to the dress. With a bit of very precise measuring, 'tis the old pinch and hold, I decided I can remove 12 inches from the top of this fabric to leave behind a maxi dress. And then I split the 3 yards in half and cut some pockets from that top removed bit. Once I had turned those 2 rectangles into a tube with pockets on the side, we can do some more very precise measuring to decide what should be gathered where. I'm about 12 inches from outer boob to outer boob and about 6 inches from outer boob to armpit. So I'm gonna measure in and put a pin at 6 inches on both sides of the tube and then cut some strips of binding 12 inches long. That whole middle section gets gathered up, or really gathered down, to the 12 inches, and then I can stitch the binding on, and we have this lovely little front of the dress. Same thing going on in the back. Now, rather than making one long piece of binding to cover the armpit area and be the straps like I did on the jumpsuit, I didn't love how that looked in the end, I'm gonna bind the armpit area on its own, adding just a slight amount of gathering in there to fit the dress nicely around me. And then I made 4 tubes and stitched those onto the meeting points of the binding sections, forcing them into a little more of a V shape so that my straps can be tied on the shoulders. Adjustability, huzzah! I did have to go back and adjust my underarm length. It was still maybe an inch or 2 bigger than it needed to be, which just made it sag outward oddly. And that's why I say that this is all just inspirational experimentation rather than a tutorial. Even after 3+ years of sewing, I often have no idea what I'm doing. But I did have just enough fabric left over to make a sash, so fun times! I actually like the final product way more than I thought I would. The fabric is so light and comfortable on the body, and it's just a delight to wear all sacky and drapey. But then when I add the sash, I think it looks like a really nice, more fitted sundress. Solid success on this one. We're essentially gonna do that exact same dress again, only this time with tiers, so it's totally different, and technically all still made out of really long rectangles. I have these 2 fabrics, which I've been wanting to pair together for a very long time. I just didn't know for what. This seems perfect. And I'm a little bit tired of binding, so I think I'm gonna figure out something different to do with the top. I don't know, I gotta give that a little bit of thought. I think if I do something where it's lined, which would be a good idea anyway because this is pretty thin fabric, so 2 layers over the bust just seems smart. But if it's lined and I'm sewing 2 pieces together, then I don't have to bind that whole top area, right? Yeah. After about 3 minutes of thinking, I was tired of thinking, so I just started doing. I ended up cutting out 4 22 by 10 inch rectangles, 2 from each fabric, and then I turned the remaining little bit of striped fabric into 4 small rectangles for the straps. Once I had done all the normal strap construction, those could get layered between the outer and inner fabrics 5 inches in from the edge and sewn down. The side seams are sewn to turn this into a crop top sort of thing, and then I tried it on and realized it's kind of gapey in the front, which I knew would happen and yet did nothing about in advance, because that's just how I make stuff sometimes. Tore that seam out, then used a little bit of gathering to cut the length down by 2 inches, and now it's pretty okay. Not a super snug fit, but that's to be expected when using rectangles and a less drapey fabric like this one. I cut my remaining striped fabric into 2 long rectangles to be tier number 2 of this dress, and then my remaining floral fabric I need to cut into 4 long rectangles to be tier number 3. I'm not measuring anything, I'm just using the fabric that I have. I dug out some random white bedsheet fabric to make the pockets, because of course we need pockets, but also I'm totally out of the 2 original materials. Rectangles are very low waste. And I feel like the concept from here is pretty simple. Turn the rectangles into a loop, gather to fit the layer above, sew it on. Let's just skip to this one being done, yeah? It's so freaking fun! I love the way gathered tiers behave in a twirl, you know? There's that ripple effect around the edge, and it's so pretty. Kinda like the last one, I didn't expect to love this one as much as I do. It's just so nice to wear something that's pretty and twirly and fun, but also drapes over the body in the most relaxed, unsnug way. Like, I feel free in these big sack dresses. Free and fun and floral and flowy all at the same time. Love it! Y'all, I am quite enjoying this. I'm having a good time. I think there's something really nice about just sewing some really simple stuff, because it's not without challenge. It's not like brainless or, you know, mindless activity the way that maybe like embroidery is for me. I'm still having to put thought into each piece, but there's not like those huge sections where I'm spending hours trying to figure out some design complication. So I'm gonna keep going. Ah, there's stuff in my eyes. Y'all, this has been a day of stuff being in my eyes. I'm actually leaving town in like 3 days now, which by now you would have already heard about probably. So my thought is kind of to just keep making stuff until I leave, and then this project will be over. Love a solid end date. This is probably the last thing that I'm gonna do, but I wanna try the 2 just sort of sheath dresses with some sort of cinching here. I really wanna do one that is just one long rectangle with a hole in the center, and one that's multiple pieces. Starting with the single piece version, my brain is saying maxi dress for both of these, but I don't actually have a chunk of fabric in this stack long enough for that. So I'm gonna have to stitch 2 rectangles together at the shoulders to make it the one long rectangle. But it's basically the one long rectangle in spirit, you know? Also, this fabric is delightfully soft. It's gonna be so nice on the body. As we've done before, I'll fold that in quarters and cut out a neck hole, although I'm making it really small this time because it's really just the back neckline. I can then fold just the front half of the dress in half and cut a lower neckline there. Still pretty small for now, cause that's how I do. I'll probably make it bigger later, but for now, I'm gonna cut some pockets out from this little bit of remaining fabric and get those sewn in with some side seams. So now that we've essentially got a sheathy tube dress with pockets, hello, do you need attention? Attention, attention, attention. I'm essentially just going to sew elastic right here to cinch this in and give it a bit more shape. I'll probably just create a little fold on the inside of the dress. You literally just like whoosh, fold it up and that makes the channel. And then the elastic is concealed in there. You could also literally just sew over the elastic like with a zigzag stitch, but I prefer to have it covered for like textural stuff. And then we just finish the neckline, hem the sleeves, hem the bottom. It did end up a little bit, oh, I'm sorry, BB. Did I touch your fur? How dare. It's a little bit penguin pencil-y. There's not a lot of stride space. So I think I'm also going to add a split up the back. The last time I made a dress like this, I put splits in the side, and I just didn't think of doing that this time. So I'll just add one. I ended up sewing some elastic directly onto the outside of the dress, stretching it as I went, and then basically folding the fabric of the skirt upward to cover it afterward. This was not the greatest idea. It was much harder to sew than it would have been if I had just made a flat channel and then strung the elastic through. And I think it's slightly crooked because I didn't bother measuring out a perfectly straight line first. Good one, me. So for the second version of this dress, we don't need that one long rectangle. Instead, you do one rectangle that goes just from here over the shoulders to there in the back. And that could technically, again, be 2 if you don't have enough fabric. You could put shoulder seams in it. And then it's a rectangle for the front skirt, however long you want that to be, and one for the back. So it's just a little bit easier to fit it on a piece of fabric that's a little bit smaller, like this one. Since I've used it before, I think it has some weird cutouts. But like this portion right here can be the skirt, and then I might be able to get the top out of this section here. And I think I might try doing a drawstring on this one. My thought is kind of to do the top portion and then literally cut out like a thin strip of fabric and layer another one over it that opens. Because doing a drawstring is always a little bit interesting for me. You have to figure out how to get the ends out. But I think just 2 layers of fabric on top of each other in a thin little strip with the drawstring inserted, and then you sew that little strip of fabric between your bodice half and your skirt half. Yeah, that makes sense in my head. So that's what we're gonna try to do here. And I'm excited to use the rest of this fabric for something. This is one of my favorites. Let's see if it's 30 inches. It's 26. Should I use a different fabric? I really want to make something out of this that I like and that fits me. I just love this fabric so much. I need these fabrics to actually be 60 inches wide. That's not long enough either to actually go over the shoulder. Okay, I don't think this is enough for that. Dang it! It doesn't have to be a maxi dress. But does that actually change anything? Why is everything the exact same measurement? All right, I'm gonna noodle a bit and decide on a fabric, and then we'll do this. After sidetracking by making a top you've already seen, I decided to dump the maxi of it all so I can use this striped material that I have like 2 1/3 yards of. I cut about 30 inches off the full length, love cutting stripes, and then cut off about 36 inches of that to be the top. Added a V neckline, cause why not make it harder on myself? The remaining bit gets cut in half to be the skirt, and then with that 10-inch-ish strip I cut off the side, I made 4 long rectangles to match the width of the skirt, cutting one of them in half. That's where the drawstring will come out. Finally, I have enough left over to cut out those oh-so-necessary pockets, and the teeny bit left might come in handy as binding. I think I have normal binding that will match this though. I sewed the long strips together, one into an even longer strip and one into a circle, and then those get layered on top of each other, and I stitched a channel down the center and threaded it through with some of that t-shirt style yarn that goes really well with this color. The rest of the construction is pretty straightforward. Turn the skirt pieces into a tube with pockets, fold the bodice piece into a top, and take care of those raw edges, and then stitch each side onto the middle connector piece. I did somehow manage to stitch the skirt on backwards, but luckily that doesn't matter much. It's just like the pocket opening that you can tell is supposed to be the other way around. Overall, I made this one a little smaller than I would normally want it to be for my size. Because of the amount of fabric I had, the rectangles were 24 inches wide, and since my hips are 42 inches around, that's a little snug. The concept absolutely works though. Long rectangle out of a fairly drapey material, hole cut in the center, elastic under the bust or at the waist, Bob's your uncle. Because the first one was snug, I jumped all the way up to 60 inches around for the second one, and as a result, it's a little bigger than I think is necessary for me. This is why experimentation is so necessary. You gotta try things, put them on, move around in them, and then go, okay, nope, should have gone for an in-between number. This one is super comfy and easy to wear though, and it's extremely adjustable. Like, I wouldn't call it too big for me, because the drawstring makes it work just fine. But also it definitely would work better, I think, for someone a little bigger than me. Whoa! That was a lot of stuff to try on all in a row. It was also a lot of stuff to sew. I've really just been sitting around sewing for the last week, and it's been so enjoyable. But this very much felt like getting back to the basics. It felt like going back in time like 2 years ago or so, when I would just take these really basic concepts and explore them and make a ton of different stuff, just slightly tweaking as I went. Like, it reminds me of the dolman sleeve exploration I did way back in the day. Only now, I actually like finish all of my raw edges. At least on woven fabric. Still can't be bothered on stretch material. These were also all like really straightforward to sew. The binding of the necklines and everything is the most difficult part of this, at least for me, but like I don't have a serger. So if you have a serger to finish all of your raw edges with, these are incredibly simple. But as we became well aware of earlier this year, when I cleaned out my whole closet, I do not need all of this clothing that I've just made at all. I like all of these pieces. I think they're all enjoyable and I made them all pretty decently, I think. But yeah, some of them are not really the right size for me, as we talked about. Some of them I just know that I won't really wear. Like those wrap tops, I think they're really cute, but I had so much trouble finding something to pair with them because I have barely anything black. I had to pull out my emergency black pants for when you have an emergency that requires black pants. So all of that to say, I am not going to be keeping all of these pieces. I think I'm just going to do a giveaway this time, rather than like a charity sale or something. So that'll be over on Patreon sometime in the next few days. That's free if you want to join. Free to everyone. It's a pay what you want model. And I hope that this is some inspiration if you are interested in starting to self-draft clothing, but like it's really, really intimidating. I really think starting with like rectangle or circle clothing is the easiest way to get in there. The measurements are just so much simpler, and it gives you the confidence. Like making the first circle skirt that I made gave me the confidence basically for everything else I've done since then, because it was just a circle with a waistband on it. But it works and it looks so good. So definitely give it a try. Give self-drafting a try. Cut out a rectangle, make something amazing out of it. Why are there so many sirens? Calm down. My stomach. Couldn't possibly have prepared that in advance. No, that would have been too easy. I think I'm gonna make at least one more. If not, I died. And then I split the 3 yards. Oh God, we're dying. This is so much voiceover. Did you just do a boot? Oh, you just did such a big fart. There's water running somewhere.